Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Artfluence session on small town mobilization. The series of conversations in Artfluence are about how arts and human rights relate. We are interested in these sessions in questions related to alternate and independent thinking and voices which can impact on government and reshape existing, currently top-down approaches. We are interested in how these can further our understanding of human rights and social change using the arts. So just an explanation, small towns we see as both white townships as well as townships, which are black towns, are seen as less relevant than big cities for political and economic activity. They're often marginalized spaces while cities get limelight. However, these places are becoming important sites for the realization of democratic rights and change. The state has recognized this and has a project in the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department, COGTA, to build on the already dynamic forces at play coming from towns who have decided themselves to build on their own internal dynamics. And we'll meet at least one town that is doing this in Howick, as well as work from the independent sector in Oudtshoorn, where historic significance and land rights are contested areas, but where the projects that are being brought to fore create opportunities to engage in critical ways with the ways culture may be challenged. Our session will be drawing on speakers working in these two towns, but also from Nelson Mandela Bay, Gqeberha and Rwanda to inspire our debate. I'll introduce each of them before they speak, and they'll each speak for 8 minutes. And thereafter, we will have a short period for discussion before we end. There are some key questions that we'll be asking or interested in from our speakers. And so I'll just quickly go through some of these. We are trying to understand the ways that arts and other creative projects can revive towns and places through using creative approaches. We are interested in the way these can transform spaces and improve the lives of people experiencing poverty and marginalization in these small towns. We are interested to know, how does this cultural development work with people who have basic needs, as much as we are interested in how it develops tourism or builds economic growth for those in the mainstream. What learnings we gain from our panelists is very important to us. We want to see how their particular projects have changed places. And we are interested to know whether these projects, which inspired often small town or small city, in the case of Gqeberha, mobilization, what are the possibilities? And what, if anything, is possible in scaling up such projects? We are also interested in questions of community engagement or participatory processes into neighborhood and town changes and how these lead to social transformation. How are these projects empowering locals? And if so, what practices may be needed or can be learned from? We are interested also to understand, how does culture and cultural symbols become ciphers for mobilization beyond just being simply built fabric monuments or memorials or public art? So how do these things actually mobilize people and change people? What is the role of ephemeral initiatives, festivals, theater projects, etc., where people are working live in real time to use arts-based approaches, and what other alternatives might exist? We're also open to critical factors such as gentrification and the challenges that tourism can sometimes lead to creating inequality in some instances. As we know from the research, it's not always the case that tourism necessarily leads to economic growth for all, but these kinds of projects can sometimes limit the opportunities for some people to engage in the mainstream. But we have some great projects that will help us challenge that assumption that comes from research. And lastly, we're going to be interested in the question of how do we measure impacts of such projects. It's all very well to do these wonderful projects, but it's a whole other thing to actually make to show that they work, and to be able to draw on our impacts to build further fundraising, to increase our audiences, to take forward the kind of work we do. I'm going to start with the first of our wonderful 4 speakers, and that is JP Prinsloo. And JP is the chairperson of the uMngeni Tourism, and Artfluence Human Rights Festival is working very closely with them, and both the municipality and the tourism board, to understand how arts can advance human rights values. And JP will talk to us a little bit about the 6-day program that commemorates the 60th anniversary of the arrest of former President Nelson Mandela in Howick in 1962. And Howick has an amazing piece of artwork related to this. JP, I hand over to you to present to our audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zahid, and good evening to everyone for joining. Just a bit about uMngeni Tourism. We are the official tourism body within the uMngeni municipality area. And if you are well-versed and well-known within the Midlands, so that stretches all the way from Hilton to Nottingham Road and Carkloof to Doggle, including our biggest township area, which is the Mpopomeni area. We are in the heart of the Midlands. If you wanted to come to the Midlands, you have to come past uMngeni to get anywhere where we wanted to do. One of the biggest challenges that we as an organization had to go through over the past few months was to figure out what we can do as an organization and to be beneficial to the businesses that we represent, but also becoming a real partner with government as well as our communities that we work with very closely. And uMngeni Tourism has walked a very long line about consultation with people within our own community to see how we can benefit each one of these different industries or perspectives that we as an organization need to encompass. And what we've really tried to do as an organization is to really focus on the storytelling history of what the Midlands has to offer, not just within specific communities within the municipality, but to get a broad view of what we have to offer as uMngeni as a whole. And that has resulted in us creating our campaign called Midlands My Way, is by creating an experience for people to travel destinations and experience various offerings that communities have in a way that they want to, without being exposed to some things that they might not be interested in. And the arts plays a massive role into this specific aspect of the campaign, also the terminology, and also how we've set up the organization. And one of our key focuses as an organization is the training and development of people within our own communities by utilizing art as the basis for that. And when we went through our whole introspection as an organization, we identified this as a core mandate for us as an organization to do, and how to benefit communities by utilizing art to not to just benefit the physical community that's hosting the art installations, but to the artist itself, but also in the broader scheme of things of how everything ties into one another. And we started with a simple campaign. It was called the Smart Street campaign, where we've identified various areas within our own community that we thought that has a massive tourism appeal to people to go and visit, obviously with including a few logistics into that, but predominantly in areas that people don't necessarily go to. And one of these campaigns, what we finalized in the beginning of this year, was to take over one of the bridges in one of our areas within the uMngeni municipality called Maryvale. We partnered with the local artist and gave her free rein to say, listen, this is what we want. We want to represent the Midlands area, what you can find here, but we want to give you the creative freedom to come up with some ideas for what you think we need to include in the space. And she did that. And the relationship and the support that we gathered through the community, through the artists that we empowered to do this art installation for us, and also the partnerships that we created with the municipality has been immensely supportive. But also with our businesses. It's not just installing a local art installation to beautify an area or to bring people into that space, or to create more ownership of the area that you install these aspects of, but it's also to get the wider community on board with what we are doing. And that gave us a great opportunity to partner with local businesses surrounding the art installation to maintain, look after it, promote it, and make sure that it's something that has a lasting effect on that specific community. And not only did that have a positive impact by driving a lot more tourists to the Maryvale area, but it also gave the artists an opportunity to be exposed and show their artwork to people that come past there. And in an age of technology where we would like to create those Instagrammable moments when you go onto various destinations is something key that people are looking for. And we managed to achieve this through the specific Smart Street campaign. And we've identified various other locations within the municipality to connect with one another to create those tourism experiences, those outdoor art destinations or galleries where people can literally go to without having to pay anything and learn something of the community. And by also connecting that to various technological features that we have now by creating QR codes and creating our own tourism destinations leading from one installation to the next is something that we are really working on as a tourism destination and as a board to create that full experience that you can have. One of our partners and our members, it's a gallery called Gallery Zaza based in Hilton, and they've been working very closely with us over the past few months to create Hilton as the street art capital of the country, where they're actually going to launch their very first Boomtown Festival at the end of May, where they've identified on the main route of Hilton Avenue certain locations where they're going to do street art exhibitions, getting various artists from the communities, specifically our previously disadvantaged communities, to come showcase what they have there, and then beautifying that entire area, but also exposing the artists at the same time, creating a route where people can walk from one exhibition to the next, learning more about the artists, but also showcasing the history of what the Midlands has to offer, and the people that live here. To explain those stories that we have to tell to people, and curating even further those type of routes to people's interests and needs that they would like to experience. But also very importantly, what we're trying to do is with all of these art installations is to ensure the sustainability of that and partnering with local businesses, but also bigger projects that's coming around within our communities and seeing how we can influence those projects with the art industry that we are working very closely with. And I'll use an example of a project coming up in Hilton where they are turning all the old railway lines that they're not using into running and cycling tracks. And what we've done now is we've partnered with Gallery Zaza to do outdoor installations along that running and cycling route. So then when you can go out, you take your kids to a nature-based experience, exposing them to the beauty that Hilton has to offer, but also being educated at the same time about the art that is in those spaces. So that they speak the message of the history of Hilton, but also making sure that it's an educational aspect of the people that go to those spaces. So it's very important for us to ensure that any kind of projects or initiatives that we do have as an organization, as a tourism board, that it ticks quite a few boxes in terms of not just empowering the communities that these art installations are in, but also the members that are part of the organization, the artists, but also have a long-term sustainability aspect of that, so that we can ensure that it's not just a once-off project, but really creating tourism routes and experiences and further expanding on what we can have to offer as the tourism sector. And then just investing back into those people, making sure that the people that we do utilize, that they get exposure to bigger and broader markets that they might not have had in the past. And that's what we really want to focus as the Midlands, is telling those stories, creating an experience for people to experience the Midlands their way, and just making sure that we foster enough partnerships to make sure that these projects are successful. And once again, ensuring the sustainability of that with anything that we do when it comes to the arts and culture within our area in the Midlands area. And then ultimately to spark those discussions amongst our community members, asking why this specific art piece and not another one. And there are a lot of things that's based within our community that people might not be aware of. So it's an opportunity for us to also educate our own community, create that synergy between community members within the Howick and Oudsthoorn area, and utilizing all of these to the best of our abilities. Thanks very much, Zaid.
Thank you so much, JP. That was really awesome and on time. Very exciting work being done in Howick. Wonderful part of the KZN area, very beautiful and lush and much to see. And with the artwork project that's being proposed, there's a lot more opportunities that it will create for people to visit. I'm now going to introduce Neil Coppen, who is one of South Africa's most renowned and prolific storytellers, who's worked across a variety of mediums and disciplines, including theatre, journalism, and film. He's currently, and he'll speak about Amphitheatre, which he has co-founded. I probably have said it wrong. and has been responsible for launching several groundbreaking theatre projects over the last decade in South Africa, including Soil and Ash, which focused on rural communities facing pressures from coal mining companies, uWebu, which looks at street level drug addiction, The Last Country, which deals with female migration stories, Boxes, which is an urban land justice inequalities in the city of Cape Town project, and Lalele Ulwanle, an international project supporting sustainable transformative governance of our oceans. Thank you so much, Neil. Over to you.
Thank you, Zaid, so much. Hi, everyone. It's a great privilege to be here. I'm sorry if I gabble in all directions today. I've just been working on a project up in northern Zululand, one of a kind of participatory process, and it's up in Mbazwan. So we just got back a few hours ago, and my head's a bit all over the shop. So I hope I make sense. But I'm just going to talk quickly a little bit about kind of my involvement in the last 15 or so years with kind of public participatory arts processes, particularly with theatre, but it also stems into the visual arts world, where I work alongside visual artist uMngeni a lot on different projects. And one of the first projects that kind of got me really excited about the potential of small towns and how much extraordinary talent that is existing in these pockets that's never quite discovered because they are, you know, constantly marginalized and kind of seen on the fringes of the more kind of urban art scenes. And it was a project with Vanza called 2010 Reasons to Live in a Small Town, where artists could apply and you could choose the small town of your choice to go live in for several months and create and test a kind of participatory arts project. uMngeni and I ended up in the town of Dundee in northern KwaZulu-Natal. I had a great interest in the reenactment, the culture of battle reenactment, this absurd notion of kind of dressing up in your grandparents' underpants and historic costume and running around and firing blanks at one another on a football field. There was something it became a really interesting analogy for South Africa for me and our kind of understanding of history, or the futility of this kind of regurgitating and wrestling it. So we went there and we engaged historians, battle reenactors, Maskandi groups, traditional musicians, teachers, educators, activists. It was a really deep listening and engagement process. And we also worked with Pam McFadden at the Tulana Museum, and there's this incredible archive, obviously a very colonial archive of Dundee. And we ended up photostating hundreds of pictures from the archive, and then began this process of reinventing the archive. Obviously, moving through the images, you could see that this was a very one-sided representation, a very problematic and exclusionary kind of archive. And so the project became about how can we expand the archive, but how can we also use the archive irreverently? And we worked in Sibongile, the community that's just alongside Dundee, and we asked people to bring in their own images of their family and started to build a kind of new archive of the region, particularly around the more marginalized areas on the outskirts of Dundee itself. And then we started mashing all the archives together in this collage process where and collage is a beautiful process because anyone can do it. You don't need to be an artist. But what started emerging from these hundreds of collages that were conducted during this process was this very satirical, sometimes very political look at history, but also this kind of irreverent reinvention and reimagining of history, which became quite an exciting premise when it comes to working with the archive. Later in that project, Vaughan and I went back and we did a huge oral history project where we worked in the Sibongile library and we trained up several oral historians from high schools in the region and in the kind of ethics and the process of oral history. And these kids went out into their community of Sibongile and started generating the most incredible new archive of storytelling, interviewing the elders in the community. And we subsequently got to open a new archive that would exist alongside Tulana's ones, but no less important, and a kind of contemporary and close examination of the history of Sibongile. So that was a very wonderful process. It was about research first, getting people from the town to do the research itself. It's not about a bunch of outside researchers coming in and conducting the research. But then after the research is done over several months, this process where we, the participants, and us, the facilitators, we become a kind of living archive, because you embody and hold these many stories that are emerging. And then it becomes working with a bunch of artists in the town to go, how can we now articulate these new stories, these marginalized stories that have been on the fringes of history for way too long? How can we move the spotlight onto them? And when I say histories, they're not these grandiose battle Boer War histories, or, you know, it's not about looking for the fabled and the mythological, but actually the everyday. The heroes, I believe, in South Africa and in these towns are in people who won't make the history books, but whose stories are nevertheless crucial to be heard and attended to and listened to. And so that became a process of transforming all of this narrative data that had emerged over 6 months into these wonderful theatrical outputs that could then be shared back with the town and people visiting the town to hear and understand these stories. Theatre is the most powerful way of making archives live, embodying them. And that all becomes from the town itself, local performers. And this is a process that we've now carried on into Oudtshoorn. I've just got back from Oudtshoorn too. I've been living there for 6 months with uMngeni again, the visual artist. And we decided to convince the Klein Karoo Kunstefees, Yicho, and this incredible artistic directorship there, who were really excited about doing a project that really re-centered the spotlight, not from outside performers coming in once a year to this town, but what are the stories and the talents existing within Oudtshoorn itself. It was a very deep participatory process, 6 months of working with over, consulting over 200 people within the town, traditional leaders, indigenous knowledge holders, teachers, activists, auditioning over 300 kids and young artists in the region that would be a part of this huge festival. And after we got about, I think it was 1,600 pages of research from this process of stories, we then worked with this incredible creative team that we had assembled in Oudtshoorn to transform that research, those stories, into a visual arts exhibition using collage and the archive in the same way we did in Dundee, but also transforming this into this epic theatrical production that really tried to excite people about these histories. So yeah, that's just some of what we're doing at the moment. Empatheatre is another whole kettle of fish, which I won't have time to chat about now, but I'm sure we'll cover some of those processes as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you. That was great. That was a really exciting project that was done throughout the country by Vanza in 2010. And, there's quite a lot of really amazing projects that can be looked at by people if they're interested in it. And a great deal of work was done in documenting that process. So that's really amazing. I'm now going to hand over to Dorel Sapera, who's the Senior Project Manager for the Mandela Bay Development Agency. And Dorel is a qualified architect. She's registered with the South African Council for the Architectural Profession. She has over 40 years of diverse experience, 32 years in management. She'll be talking a lot about the Mandela Bay Development Agency, which is where she works, which is a major municipal entity dealing with local economic development through the facilitation of urban renewal. And they do a range of really exciting projects and have been looking at how to unlock arts and culture opportunities to achieve the development of the city. So Dorel has brought about significant transformation in her approach of using arts in urban renewal in Gqeberha, and she's going to share some of those good practices with us. Over to you, Dorel.
Thank you, Zaid. It's team effort always. So I cannot take credit myself, but yes, the agency is a unique creature, a very interesting one. Not unique. There are a number of agencies around the country, but we were brought about in 2003 or so to bring about urban renewal in the inner city with an early model that spoke about investing public money into public spaces in order to try and unlock and leverage private sector investment to bring about the change in a very dirty, dismal city that it had become. come 2010, there seems to be a thread about 2010 in this conversation. 2010, as a host city for Soccer World Cup, we were able to gear some funding from the Lotto to create a fan zone, not a fan park, but a fan zone. In other words, transform a public space into something really exciting for all the gazillions of tourists that were going to come and visit. So we had this unique opportunity to shift our way of working from upgrading streets to something that was really participatory, meaningful, and focused on arts and culture, because our city trains up, has unique talent, lots and lots of it, exceptional talent across all the sectors in the arts, and yet we lose them to Joburg and Cape Town because the opportunities are there. So we wanted to see if the Soccer World Cup could change things around a little bit. And so we set to work on a piece of colonial heritage known as the Donkin Reserve, which was a public open space right in the heart of the city that bore the name of the woman after who the city at the time was named. So your static conventional monument space, green space, very underutilized. And what we did was that we conceptualized together with the stakeholders in the city. So all the arts bodies, the universities, students, artists from around the city, all the various organizations that were involved in the creative sector somehow, and the cultural sector, and set about planning, well, what could we do? Cut a long story short, we developed a route that celebrated the 67 years that Mandela had contributed to the struggle and our freedom and democracy in the country. And we filled this route with 67 pieces of public arts. It was a very ambitious program. I mean, we were really laughed at that we thought it might be possible, but yet one of the key takeouts was that in partnership and with an absolute drive from all the stakeholders and participants to make something special for 2010, and all the visitors, we managed to install these 67 pieces of art, benefited about 200 artists. We fixed up some old buildings as marketplaces. We did a lot of training, a lot of capacity building, and unlocked the kind of events that promoted job creation. So this Route 67, as it's known, started a very considered integration of arts, culture, and heritage into the work that we did. So we shifted from infrastructure provision to placemaking, an approach that says in whichever area that we work, how do we unlock local talent, local expertise, whether it's filmmakers, artists, musicians, to bring about a great place. And that was one of the major learnings that we had out of the process. So in the last 10, 15 years, we have expanded that thinking across the metro, because we now no longer only work in the inner city, but the same philosophy of creating economic transformation, social transformation, spatial transformation, utilizing arts, culture, heritage, and tourism has become it's ingrained in the way that we work. Always rooted in extensive public participation and engagement with the sectors that are in the particular areas. We now work across the metro in 6 different areas. The most recent one that we are looking at a similar process or an extension of Route 67 is New Brighton. New Brighton has a huge history, birth ground of the ANC, start of the Defiance campaign, lots and lots of political heroes, but also lots and lots of everyday heroes, sporting heroes, jazz, great jazz coming from the area. So the same approach of unlocking various sectors. So we're looking at what jazz festivals we can organize. We've done a couple of those. We've collected stories, the intangible history stories of who were the heroes, who did what, who were the sporting heroes, who was every man, what did every man do towards whether it was the struggle or the transformation in New Brighton, and unlocking current tourism experiences, because we see that that's where tourism going. It's about responsible tourism, but it's also about those small, unique experiences that an emerging entrepreneur can take and make happen in an area such as New Brighton. So we are currently in the process of unlocking a similar route, an extension that would pick up in New Brighton on all the talents that exist there. So we have films that are being made, we have books that have been prepared, we are looking at what abandoned buildings there are that could be converted into creative industry, tourism stimuli in the area. We are looking at green heritage. So what do we have in terms of the biodiversity? There are huge big areas that are part of a potential World Heritage Site, the Swartkops Conservancy, that link very closely into New Brighton. How do we unlock viewing flamingos, which are profusely in the area? How do we unlock the local experiences of having a little bird watching chalet, or what do we do? And all of that is rooted in working with what is there already and finding ways to strengthen those initiatives. Yes, with an economic development focus of creating jobs, but also about culture, identity, the conversations about the uniqueness and how do we add value to a tourism product that is about experiences rather than the dry monument. So how do we take, as in New Brighton, a cemetery that has got lots and lots of stories of very special people that are buried there? How do we bring the young poets and the young dancers and the musicians to tell the story of the space as part of an events, markets, experiences that are happening there? So what have our learnings been? That this very successful international recognition of Route 67, lots and lots of interest from ships that have a day in PE or Taberga and then move on. So Route 67 is very popular, has been very popular to do a quick visit to the city. But the fundamentals for us is about rooted in good public participation, good stakeholder engagement, and work with what you have and make it fabulous. So those processes take time, take patience, and take the ability to really listen and find a way to hear what the solutions are, don't necessarily come and impose them. So tracking, how do we track the impact? That's an interesting question, Zaid, because I think it's probably quite a difficult one to get to the reality of it. But we have in the 15 years contracted consultants to do just that, to test what is the impact in the area. So has this injection of finances into public art and creative sector made a difference, and track that over a number of years. And certainly in the early years, yes, there was definite in Central, lots and lots of improvement and changes and excitement around that. I think our approach going forward is going to be rooted very much into understanding what the responses are from the groups that we've been working with. So yes, having some base data, but then through social media campaigns, through reaching out through workshops, one-on-ones, getting young interns possibly to move around and ask the questions. I think that is partially one of the solutions that we would look at on the impact. The public voice is very important to us. So whether we do physical gatherings, listening, dialogues, we love dialogues. We love bringing people together to listen and hear what the stories are. We also like social media campaigns where we can ask quick questions and get quick answers and get those analyzed. So we do a lot of that as well. I think one of the questions specifically were, what are the kind of challenges in these built environments and how does one deal with it? So what we find is ownership. How do we ensure that ownership happens? That's one of the biggest challenges. I'll leave it at that because I see Zaid waving at me that time's up. We could speak a lot more, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Darrell. That's a truly incredible set of projects, the work in Donkin Reserve, the work in New Brighton, and Darrell has been a key facilitator in making people talk to each other, drawing on the resources of the city to really shift ways in which public funds and capital projects can make a difference to cities by engaging people, by using creativity, etc. So very exciting work. I'm now going to hand over to Mashekuru Benvin. Mashekuru is from Rwanda. He completed his arts education at Rwanda's prestigious art school called the Art de Nyundo, in 2014 with a major in graphic design, painting, and sculpture. He's fully involved himself in doing work professionally as an artist and highly motivated through his works. And he evokes himself in his painting using layers of color and stylized form. He has also launched a very exciting project called Masha, Musanzi Art Studio Hub Adventure, both an art studio and an art gallery operating in the Mushanzi district with the aim of making quality artworks while promoting art in the area, helping young artists who have proven talent and passion. And he has also looked backwards in Rwandan history. As many of you know, there's a difficult history in Rwanda of violence, ethnic violence. So he's looked backwards and he's looked to promote different art forms that transform the lives of people across different countries. And he's trying to focus heavily on questions of inclusivity and looked beyond questions of ethnic origin, race, spirituality, or sexual orientation to the whole person. Mashakuru, can I hand over to you, please? Please put on your camera, and I hope you can hear us. Okay, Mashakuru might have a bit of a problem because of latency issues. Mashakuru.
Hi. Thank you. As you say, I'm Mashakuru uMngeni, an artist and the founder of Musanze Art Studio Hub Adventure. So Musanze Art Studio Hub Adventure is a big hub where I opened the space due to a challenge where in my district, we don't used to have a space where artists can work and express their talents. I opened the space as them to help upcoming artists to get place where they can work and exhibit their artwork. Due to mainly we used to fund the art gallery not in Musanze, but they accept only the artwork with famous artists here in Rwanda. So I opened the space to help those upcoming artists. It was also to help the kids where in Musanze Studio we have a program where we take talented kids under age of 15 and we give them materials and we teach them all progress they can be successful in art. And we try to encourage them in their talent where the smart painting they do, when it's sold, they take the money so that it is the way of encouraging them and believing that their talent can help them in the future. Again, Musanze Art Studio, we try to see how we can deal with the street children, where we arrange some activity. There is one which is called Paint the Streets, where we go and make the live painting in the streets in the way of meeting with the street children and give him the way where they can express themselves. And again, we work with the group of people with BATFA, where we work with them. Before in Rwanda, they used Aura as the way they can spread it. So we work with them for the pottery and the clay and pottery and the sculpture, so that they can express their feeling in art. In Musanze Art Studio, currently it's a hub of 12 artists, and 12 artists, upcoming artists, and also currently in this year we have trainees. We have 30 trainees where they are getting training in art, and also in holidays, in every holidays and weekend is where we take those kids with age of under 15 and we turn them art. You know, the people used to tell their story through oral, but here we try to tell the story with art, because with art you can express what you want to express due to, you can make an art which someone can love, and you can express what your message there. Again, Musanze Studio, we try to remind people where the ancient time through mural painting. We do mural painting where we painted the story of Rwanda. We paint the story. We make the mural painting which tell the story, which tell the ancient story, so to help the young kids, so that they can know before how was Rwanda, how is our history of Rwanda. That's also we do in Musanze Art Studio. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masikuru, and we're very pleased to have you with us from Rwanda. It's always a wonderful experience to have people from the continent to share their work with us. I think all the speakers picked up really exciting sets of questions and also projects that are, very inspiring, but also point to methods and approaches that are very important to build on. My area of interest is the area of local cultural policy work and practice, and this is a kind of developing area. But one of the a few of the key kind of components of local cultural practice is to build from ground up. So it's a significant part of thinking about building places is to understand first, and both Neil and Dorel have picked up strongly on the question of knowing what you're working with, of understanding where you're working with. The other part of it is participation, is working with people, listening to people, engaging them. It's less to do with the kinds of top-down, deciding how to do things, but really building upwards from where they are. And both, Dorel, Neil, Mashikuru, and JP have shown us different examples in which this is done. And then finally, the very important part, which is really listening to stories and helping people to make sense of their stories, and then helping them to share those stories with others, not necessarily always in spoken word. As Mashikuru rightly said, there are times when, oralities, it doesn't work for some people, and we really need to try and think of different ways. And Neil has shown us the different ways in which theatre has been drawn on. Dorel has raised a range of ways in which people have engaged the art making process and built on their kind of stories from below. JP too has picked up on really important kinds of processes of technology, building on how people currently engage with each other through Instagram, through a whole range of other processes. I just want to maybe hand over quickly, or not maybe, I will hand over quickly to each of the speakers to just give a quick reflection on what the other speakers said that they thought was really useful, that they can take away, and how it makes them think about the practices that they're working on and how it might change their own ways of working. I'm going to hand over in line to the way we started the process. So JP, please, could you give some reflections based on what you've heard from the other speakers?
Thank you very much. I think for me, the biggest thing was, specifically with our topic being small towns, is understanding how Dorel and the bigger metro municipalities are approaching the art scheme, and actually how much of that knowledge and skills can be translated onto officials that we work very closely with. I think that we've, as a tourism board, have taken them onto a journey to see the bigger picture that they might not have understood. But bigger metros, like what they are doing in Gqeberha, is that they could share those skills and those expertise with our officials to open their minds even further on what we can do to utilize the art to the best of our abilities. And that's one of the biggest things that we always used to struggle with, is to how to instill that inspiration into municipal officials, or specifically in the government sphere, and having people and learning from what they are doing and how they are incorporating that as an entity is very valuable for us as a small town to see what we could utilize to our own benefit, and to expand on our own ideas, and without having to reinvent the wheel, but still keeping our own identity as a small town.
Thank you so much, JP. Neil, can I hand to you?
Yeah, sure. Sure. Just again, I'm also excited by the kind of greater institutional support that's coming on board for these projects, because my recent experience in Oudtshoorn, it's very difficult to excite people in power who have access to the resources and the funds to invest in these sorts of projects. It's only possible really once they see what it can do. So, for example, this year in Oudtshoorn, getting through this first iteration, finally when people could see it, the buy-in now is just so exciting of what we're able to muster and the support that's coming. But it really does take that support. These projects, they also aren't cheap. They have to be long-term. They're not just a one-off thing. They are full engagements. In Oudtshoorn, we're trying to roll this out for 6-7 years and make it a completely sustainable community-led theatre and arts festival that's programmed by the community and performers themselves. So I think, yeah, I'm just very inspired to see that there is this greater buy-in happening. It's not something you would hear of in the recent past. And I think it's what these sorts of projects live and die on. And the fact that there are leaders out there that are already invested and understand the power of this sort of work and that are getting behind it makes our job, I talk about many thousands of facilitators, performers who do this sorts of work around South Africa. It certainly makes it more tangible and possible to devote one's career to just doing this sort of very, very important, exciting work. So yeah, I'm inspired. And then Mashikura, obviously the work that he's doing in Rwanda, and just hearing about that, it's just, there's so much to learn from each other. And I'm so excited to connect further with all of the speakers and their work. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you. Dorel.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely inspiring panel. I mean, to hear the various initiatives. I envy the small towns because you could work at a full town scale, you know, so that has its added benefits, because then you're working with a whole town and you're not faced with issues of, you know, why all the emphasis there? What about these other areas? So there's something very magical about that too. And, you know, being exposed to Rwanda example. I mean, I think for me, the biggest takeout is the ability that we have to learn and share from each other, and possibly the potential of setting up closer networking fora, because I don't believe that even though we're doing a lot of work in this sphere, it doesn't necessarily mean the metro is necessarily fully behind it and that the policies are all enable the deep participatory approaches and the investment. So so just having the strength of learning and sharing and hearing and unlocking possibilities, I think that's a big takeout for me as to how there are friends out there that are challenged with the same sort of issues, and how do we possibly find a way to network more often. I think that was the one thought that was going through my mind. I really love the ability to network with a full town there. I think that's, and speak to all 300,000 or whatever, you know, that those statistics you were quoting, to get to that level of detail in one area is just awesome.
Thank you so much, Dorel. Mashikuru, I'm going to hand over to you to share with us, what your takeaways, your learnings, your reflections are from the other presentations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have no much comment, but what I learned in this is that we can see in our small town how we can unlock every potential way we can find. We can see how we can unlock every opportunity. So I think that is it. Sorry, I'm not good on English, but it's a way of unlocking.
Thank you so much, Mashikuru. That was great. I think the one area I didn't pick up in terms of the kind of local policy work that I think all the speakers spent a significant amount of time on was the question of development and the questions of empowerment. And that the end product is not just about something that's in place, that's put in place, or something that tourists look at, etc., but also questions of human development and human capital development, as it were, to make people feel stronger, to make a sense of ownership within themselves, to give them a sense of belief in themselves, to inspire them to engage with their places more. And then various of you spoke about sustainable development, and I know that JP spoke largely in terms of economic development, and it would be interesting just now to hear from him on broader questions of sustainable development. But both Neil and Dorel picked up strongly on the kinds of environmental, but also historical, cultural, the social aspects of development, which are as critical. I'm a big fan of the work being done by the United Cities and local government to focus heavily on questions of sustainable development linked to culture, recognizing that if we don't engage with people on all levels, whether it's social, economic, political, as well as spatial and cultural, we can't really take people forward. We don't have more than 5 minutes, so if each person can give maybe a quick input on how they understand sustainable development in relation to the work that they're doing and that they've shared with us. I'll start again with JP.
Thanks. Excuse me. I think for us as a small town, what's going to determine whether something is going to be sustainable is the partnerships that we create with not just the business sector, but also the communities that we operate in. The fortunate thing about living in a small town is the sense that everyone wants to be part of the solution and coming together to actually make it work. Dorel and them being in a metro will find it a lot more difficult to get buy-in, but for us as a small town, bringing people along that journey with us is the most vital thing. And I think if we've gotten them from the start, the whole project from the end would be more successful as well.
Thank you, JP. Neil?
Well, it's a big question for a very short answer, which I'll try. But yeah, I think you cannot propose a project, like I say, over a week or two, or a fleeting visit. It definitely needs to be, what is that project doing in its inception to upskill a whole lot of younger generations moving through that project for the next project. So they will become the next leaders of it to train up the next. I mean, if we're not doing that, then there forever will need to be facilitators coming in from outside, and nothing moves. I think the project stays in exactly the same places. So it's so important that these projects are generating learning opportunities for younger generations in different skills, whether it's production management, project management, managing budgets, writing proposals, all these sorts of things. I mean, the lesson I've learned is that if you're not doing masterclasses in proposal writing and budget management, it doesn't matter what arts output you're doing, because that's the stumbling block for so many of these young artists in towns that don't have the access and exposure to running projects. And if we're not getting in the grassroots there with those sorts of skills, we're forever setting people up to fail with these sorts of projects.
Thank you so much, Neil. And I think Neil picked up the very important part that artists or creatives working with communities actually really have to understand themselves as facilitators and not simply as kind of producers of a product that they put out there. And it's about relationships and exchanges that happen over several years or several months, sometimes years. And it's about the artists maybe rethinking their ego in relation to place and really putting on their ears in ways that can listen and being empathetic. So it's a lovely, I think empatheter is a great word, because empathy is a critical factor in the work that we do. Dorel?
Thank you, Zaid. Yes, for me, for us as an agency, I think it is about two-pronged. The one is really trying to entrench the 17 Sustainable Development Goals into the work we do, or at least trying to address and understand which ones we are addressing as we go along. But in terms of the process, it's rooting what we do based on what is there. And not trying to invent and bring in something which cannot be managed, cannot be maintained. So if there are initiatives, we have a particular focus on youth, because we think that that is where the deep-rooted challenges are, 60% unemployment. It's about walking a journey together. It's about a partnership. So what are your challenges? What are you doing collectively? Where can we strengthen it? Where can we help you establish the partnerships to strengthen what you're doing? What do you need? Seed capital, training, development programs, capacity. And so it's a journey of walking together, but also creating the partnerships with the NGO sector that can provide a lot of that support, and the other sort of civic society structures, whether it's faith-based organizations, that can also do. So it is a collective approach, quadruple helix approach, so that we all work together in ensuring that the solutions are not ones that are parachuted in, but that are grown out of what is there, where the passions lie, what are we wanting to do, how do we go about finding ways to do that. And that we believe that ownership that vests with those kind of processes are far more sustainable than trying to bring in huge community centres that need operating models that ultimately end up, sadly to say, like the red location, that is almost held to ransom because the issues weren't really dealt with in the community itself.
Thank you, Dorel.
Thank you.
Mashikuru, questions of sustainable development. Do you have anything to add?
Okay, for sustainable development, I think as young, we need to emphasize on management. We are in young, after that we still poor on management and decision making. Yeah, I think those are the key points we still need to upgrade as young: decision making and the project management. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mashikuru. That was really amazing. I just want to thank you all for not just sticking to time and being great people on the panel, but sharing such deep insights and really amazing work that's happening. I just want to thank you all for making an impact in the places that you've touched. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dorel. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Mashikuru. Thank you, JP. Before we go away, we're going to play a little video for you. That video is to profile the work that uMngeni Tourism is doing, and especially focusing on the hashtag Midlands My Way project. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening and enjoy the video.
Think moments and memories. Make magic and movies. Share between sons and daughters, or just friends in their quarter. More music, more movement, more space for amusement, where history was made and the future is paved. Adventure awaits. Together, embraced. Just down the highway. Think Midlands, my way.